My name is Chris, and I am an addict alcoholic.
Hi, Chris.
Today, I am joined. I am excited because there's a lot of my childhood that I don't necessarily remember. And I tell people that we moved around a lot, but I only remember really from St. Helens on.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just aware of the moving, not so much kind of how we ended up where we are now. So do you both remember Idaho?
Yeah.
Little bits of it.
Okay.
Do you remember,
this is my brother Sean and Scott, by the way.
Do you remember walking to school from the student housing?
It's weird how some of the vivid memories I have, like that. What's that
trellis?
pipe? Yeah, that's what it's called, a trellis,
Isn't it? No, not trellis. What's it called? Culvert.
Oh,
It was a culvert.
And also think, like, in my mind though, it's like
30 foot.
Yeah, if you look at like the most amazing rapids you've ever seen,
Yeah.
right? That's what I picture, and kids are just going over it like it was nothing.
Right. So set the backstory. We lived on student housing
okay.
at University of Idaho, and we would walk to school through the college campus. Like, it was, I was in first grade. You must have been I must have been second grade in kindergarten then.
Yeah.
So second grade in kindergarten. So what is that, like 7 and 5?
Yeah. Yep.
7 and 5 walking through a college town on your way to school. No parents, no nothing. Just
Wow.
can't do that nowadays. So it seemed like forever to get across town. Probably was like a mile.
Right.
And then you could take the crosswalk and go across the little bridge to get to the school. Or there was a culvert that went across a drainage ditch that we would walk across this pipe over the drainage ditch because it was the cool thing to do.
Oh,
And
interesting.
as a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old, it seemed like Scott said, like you're crossing Niagara Falls on a rickety bridge. Like you could die at any moment.
Wow.
You know what's funny? On our walks, like, I don't remember ever like walking on a sidewalk or anything. It seemed like we just walked trails, even though we didn't need to, like, we just walked trails all the way to school, and then at the end you'd have that thing that you had to walk over.
Yep.
The pipe.
And that was like the last thing before the school.
Yep.
That's how I remember it anyways.
Okay. What do you guys remember of mom and dad, and kind of, I mean, like, did it seem like you seem to have the most memory of dad being like the stress that they were going through?
Sure.
Because by the time, I mean, my memories really get good, dad was in a better place and just continued to get in a better place financially. So he didn't seem as stressed out to Matt and I. But for you saw a lot more of the transition stuff.
Yeah. Like my 6th birthday, I think it was. I got a one action figure, Panthro action figure. And it was the best birthday ever because I knew how broke mom and dad were. And I knew that one action figure was a sacrifice for them to get that for me.
Wow.
And to have that one toy was like, man, still to this day is like the best present I ever got.
I remember that action figure. That lasted a while.
Yeah.
But that thing was cool as hell. Well, and for you, I mean, I would assume, how old were you, I should say, when we moved to St. Helens?
8. It was middle of 3rd grade.
Okay. So is that kind of where your memories really pick up, like more of what was going on at home?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I remember some parts about Idaho, but I mean, I was way too young to remember anything adult-ish,
Right.
Like, I just still... I mean, I probably only have maybe a handful of memories, but I know one of my memories is we'd be driving in the car with mom and we'd go pick up dad at the gas station. He'd be working.
Oh, wow.
And even if there was a customer, right, he would come running right over to the window and he'd just be like waving. And then he'd be like, I'm almost done. And then we'd pick us up and then we'd go swimming at the pool.
Oh, man.
Wow.
Mark Twain. The Mark 5? What was it called? Mark
I have
something
no idea.
hotel. And we got, so instead of like a community center, we went to the hotel. You could pay for a pass to swim at the hotel. It must have been dirt cheap.
There's still hotels that do that now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I remember that vividly. That's where I learned how to.
Wow.
But it's like those are the memories I have. Like I wouldn't know anything about anything financial, or I don't remember what I got for Christmas any of those years or anything like that.
Do you remember in student housing the little old lady's house that was like a candy shop?
That you'd bike to?
Yeah, we'd walk over to this house. It was a candy shop, but it was like a, you see some small businesses are started in a home.
Oh, okay.
And so it was just like a little candy shop, like maybe their front room of their house was just an aisle of candy.
Yeah, and you'd bring your shooting stars.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was like still a thing where you could bring your Tootsie Roll Pop with an Indian shooting a star, a Native American shooting a star, and get a free, you bring your wrapper in.
Yeah, but it had to be full.
Oh,
It was
yeah,
half.
yeah,
Couldn't
yeah.
be a partial.
That doesn't work.
That's
Not
right.
here,
I do
should
remember
say.
that.
I didn't, but no, I just remember it being a candy shop. I don't remember it being just some lady's house.
Yeah, it wasn't like a storefront.
Yeah.
It was like, I remember it being like, it seemed like we were going into some old lady's house.
But I feel like parents took turns and they'd take because it was like us, and I can't even remember what some of the other kids' names were.
No.
But like there'd always be like 6 of us going to the candy store.
So, this wasn't the time of helicopter parents. Mom made a map of the neighborhood, like the housing campus,
Yeah.
and we didn't even have to tell her we were leaving. We just had to move our character on the map of where we were going.
Wow.
So
And if
that-
you remember, she actually did that at the South 10th Street house too.
I don't remember that.
And that's because me and Sean lived through student housing. And she's like, hey, if they made it through that, the neighborhood seems fine.
That is wild.
So we just had to put on the map where we were going. I'm going to be at this playground.
Can you imagine doing that with Landon right now?
Oh, no, that makes me want to shit myself just thinking about
But
it.
can't you could just watch him on GPS, can't you? Doesn't he have a phone?
You could do it to an extent, but I'm
But you just feel creepy doing that?
yeah. And I'm just way too paranoid
I'm with you.
because I'm not there. If I can't see them, I get so stressed out.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, would you mind scooching your chair just a smidge?
Are you cutting this out?
Yeah.
Why do I have to scoot over then?
Because your hat is in my camera.
I see it now. I could just move my hat.
No, your disgusting hair will be. Or
Do I need a scoot?
There you go.
Oh, it's
Perfect.
nice because they bounce. So you can just bounce
Yeah.
yourself over. All right. 3, 2.
Do you do it like a hand
No, you're not supposed to say the last thing.
cut?
When do you stop counting?
Cut.
8,
I'm
7.
I just am
6.
good at editing, so I don't even have to do that.
Yeah, you got that background.
2, 1.
So
So
If you're
back
ready,
to,
you can start.
so that's Idaho. And then we went to Washington,
Okay.
Army camp, Army base. Do you remember anything of the Army base?
Man, I don't feel like I do. I don't think we did much significant there. Probably because Dad was always armying, I'm guessing, right? Whereas
Yeah.
like maybe I had
I
more of
have a
those
few-
memories before
I've got a
from.
few memories of that. Remember that? There's a picture of this. My birthday party there with like 20 random kids and a Ninja Turtle cake.
Oh yeah.
You've seen the picture, yeah. So that's kind of what we did. We hung out, all kinds of just tons of people. Like there were kids everywhere. It was great. Like I remember walking down the neighborhood and just hanging out with the kids everywhere. Just always, okay, I'm going to this kid's house, and yeah, there was no. I don't know. Like you said, it's a lot different now. You
Yeah.
don't just let your kids roam a neighborhood and go off to kids' houses without knowing these people.
Yeah.
Can you describe? Just maybe this will jog my memory. What was the landscape like in
So
Washington?
There was two. I remember living in two different places. We lived in one that was like an apartment complex, and somebody babysat us a couple houses like floors down once, and we went and watched Wizard of Oz with them. And there was a big parking lot where we'd ride our bikes in circles.
Which was the one where we lived? Where right out our back door there was a hill and woods,
That
or right out our front door,
was student housing,
and that was in Idaho.
Idaho. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I don't remember much about Washington then, probably because this little shit was born.
Yeah, I would
All the
imagine.
attention went away from me.
Ruined his life.
I know.
Center of attention.
Sorry. And I don't mean to gloss over Michael, but I don't know how much you guys remember of that situation even.
So
Because how old were you?
I was 5.
You were 5. Okay.
Yeah. I think I was 5. I was the one that found him.
Really?
Yep. Went to check on him on his nap. I could see he was splotchy, and being a 5-year-old kid, you don't really understand it.
Yeah.
You don't really get it that it's a significant thing. And I just remember saying, he's dead. Like it was just a matter of fact. Like,
Oh, yeah.
and that's kind of the last I remember of it, of the whole event.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I mean, it seems like that was kind of a turning point in the type of parenting that mom and dad did.
It may have been for the kids that came next.
And that's what I mean is I mean, obviously dad has always been our best friend, and like that's been his favorite thing is to his kids were his best friends. And he hung out with us. He didn't hang out with really anybody else.
It's because one time he went golfing and never heard the end of it. So he never pursued friendship ever again.
Never heard the end of it from who? Us?
From his wife.
Oh, ouch.
Yeah.
What a bitch. All right.
And I'll be honest, seeing Dad golf, he wasn't that great. He wasn't going pro. So if he was going to give it up, that's fine.
So
It's a funny topic. You should ask Dad about it.
So my like real memories obviously start on South 10th Street.
Yeah.
And what I think like sums up our time there is just like sheer chaos. We were horrible children.
Fair.
And that was kind of, it was an in-between spot where dad didn't have the best job at that paper mill, and he was having to work shit hours, and they were asking a lot of him, and he wanted to succeed, so he did whatever they would ask him. But then on the other end with mom, it seemed like she wanted to pursue like doing aerobics and stuff like that.
Sure.
And we took advantage of every single babysitter that came our way.
Yeah. That's why I ended up being a babysitter at 10 years old.
Yeah, I mean, and it's crazy because the environment plus more kids being spawned. And like I said, that it seemed like they both wanted to have a career. We just kind of did whatever. Like most of the memories that I have are with you guys, not necessarily with them until we got to Columbia City. Then it seemed like there was more of taking us to like the Village. Is that what it was called?
Village Inn.
Village Inn. There we go.
Freaking milkshakes were delicious.
Yeah.
And they bring you the metal cup with the extra.
Yes, exactly.
That was happening all the time. I think that was like the first place we went when we moved there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think it was.
Yep.
Did we stay there the first night in the town?
That's a good question.
Is that what happened?
Maybe.
But do you remember?
So, yeah, we did.
So, funny thing, when we pulled down our street, South 10th Street, the first day we were moving in, it was December 21st, which happened to be Keith Wood's birthday, across the street from us.
Okay.
And it was snowing. And we had just come from Idaho, where it snowed every winter. Like, it was just the normal thing. It was winter, it snowed. And, Oregon, it's not. That's like not normal. So the kids were just freaking out, and everyone was going down the neighbor's hill on whatever they could makeshift sled, pots and pans. And
Yeah.
so...
And I wonder, did Dad ever like look at the house beforehand?
They must
the
have.
neighborhood?
Yeah, I think he had gone out, I think, alone without us. Maybe with Mom. I don't remember.
Because like I remember him being surprised there was kids, and then I remember him pulling over and talking to kids, being like, "Hey, how old are you kids?" And like now that'd be the
can't do that.
creepiest thing in the world. Like, "Hey, what's up? How old are you?" And he was licking his lips. Weird.
That is why somebody was like, "Hey, with the lips, get some chapstick."
Yeah.
Sending the wrong message. So that's why he's constantly washing chapstick in the washer and dryer.
It's good for your clothes.
So I'm trying to figure out now, because something that was masked was, I mean, obviously we didn't know anything about mental health. We didn't know what anxiety was, what PTSD was, any of that shit.
Mm-hmm.
There's just a lot of burying those types of things. And almost trying to, I hate to say it this way, but like shaking the irrational aspect of us out of us. Like just, I remember a lot of like, for me, because of what I know now about my mental health, they're just not able to understand or reconcile why I would do certain things and why I would hold so much weight over other things. And there was a lot of confusion. So like I have hypomania with the anxiety, ADHD, and also like this cocktail of just wild stuff. It was hypomania basically being bipolar is
Okay.
so it's like, if you want to call it like a degree lesser than being full bipolar. But so like manic
I
episodes.
was trying to break down the word. Hypo is below, mania.
Yeah.
Like just manic, like mental disorder, or
Yeah.
so like not quite a mental disorder, but like.
Oh no, it is, because it's just not as constant. So it's harder to diagnose because it's not as in your face necessarily as like your classic bipolar disorder or something like that is. But in that sense, like, I mean, I don't even know, because it's so weird to think back on that block in particular, because it was so insane that I don't even know if at the time it even seemed stressful. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what your guys' perspective on it was, but I don't remember even the thought of like stress or scared or anything like that.
No, the only time I saw Dad stressed was when he was working on cars.
Oh.
Have you ever had to work on a car?
Oh, I'm more talking about you guys.
Me being stressed? No, it was just kids being kids. I mean, there was just another, just like moving every other time we'd moved. It was a new block with a whole bunch of new kids that were our age, and that was what I had grown up with. Was you move to a new place and there's a whole bunch of new kids, and you go out and be kids, just, I don't know, run wild.
Yeah, but I mean, you think about the childhood that our kids have in comparison to what ours was like, even just on that block, like it's completely different. We saw a lot of things that I would be terrified if our kids saw. A lot of the stuff that we did.
Like, was that house at the top of the hill, was that actually a drug house, or was it just run down?
It was just, well, I think it was their uncle had maybe, I don't know if he was dealing, but he was using drugs. And so that's why he ended up getting shot. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he got shot by somebody who was either buying or delivering. That's from what I remember. Because were you with me when we? Because I forget how old those kids were that lived there, but I remember after that happened, going into that house and then pointing at the ceiling and showing where the blood splatter was from that guy getting shot.
I don't remember it. Maybe I suppressed that one.
I was not involved in that at all.
Because then we had because those kids came and watched Aladdin with us while police were doing stuff. Yeah, it's pretty gnarly.
Don't remember that.
Yep, me neither.
Homeless person living in the woods.
Yeah, that was really funny.
Yeah, I remember that.
It's just like, just don't talk to the homeless guy. That's what our parents would be like. They'd be like, just don't talk to the homeless guy, okay? Just keep walking.
Yeah, I remember it being like not a big deal at all. Like there was no fear or concern. It was just...
Because what were we going to do? Take the long way?
No, that was like an extra 3 miles to school. We had a straight path through the sketchy woods. It took like 5 minutes to get to
Derek,
school.
whatever his name was
Broders?
nice enough to let the fence be broke on one side so we didn't have to go all the way through the woods by Sandy, whatever her name's house was, and go up. So we'd go through Derek
Broder's house, yeah.
back road. Yeah, it was easy.
But yeah, I mean, from that, Ryan getting bit by that dog.
I wasn't. Were you there for that?
No. Were you there?
Was anybody there?
I wasn't there, but I was there afterwards because I remember all the blood that was on the stairs. Trying to, I forget who was home because somebody took Ryan to the hospital, and somebody else was home and told me what happened.
That was obviously a bad situation. I remember people telling me like he actually flew up in the air from his calf. Just the dog had his calf and threw him up in the air from his calf.
Well, he was a little guy though.
And I still remember. Maybe it was the Petersons' dad or something. They're like, "Yep, they're going to take it to the farm." And I'm like, "Why would they take this dog that almost killed this kid to a farm? This dog needs to die. Like that's dumb."
Yeah.
Remember when they took Sylvester to the farm, and he came back? The cat came back from the pound across.
Dude, wait, who? Oh, they took it to. Okay, they took it to the pound.
You remember where the pound was though? It was all the way almost to Columbia City.
Yeah,
It
that's
was like
an amazing
5 miles
cat.
away.
Yep.
That
If
thing
you
was
love it,
nuts.
let it go. If it comes back, you need to kill that thing because otherwise it's just going to keep coming back.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a cat that came with the house. So previous owners weren't successful in moving their cat apparently because when we moved in, there was a cat that lived at that house. It was outside, but it never went away.
Yeah, I remember one time we left the sliding glass door open in the back, and we came home, and the cat was sitting on the couch in the house. You getting chased by that car, and I remember you guys running down the street and then jumping over that fence to Derek's house to get away from this car that was chasing you guys. I don't know if you remember that.
I think I vaguely remember it. I don't know what it was for, or maybe we were embellishing. I don't know. Maybe it was just following us or something like that. But either way, I do remember that a little bit.
Yeah,
That's funny you bring it up. I haven't thought about that forever.
Because I remember those guys yelling at you guys.
I wonder what that means. We probably did something.
Well, we used to go up. So there was like a kind of a busier road right at the top of that hill. And we'd go up and take apples and line them up on the road and watch them squish them. Probably other more devious things, but
Yeah. I'm going to get the dogs.
Can the camera see this?
No, you look at me. This is more like 30 for 30 style where they're always looking off camera a little bit. You know what I'm saying?
And that offended me.
Thank you.
That's a meme. And I felt like I've watched that entire series, and I don't remember that part where Jordan goes, and that offended me.
did you? That's not 30 for 30. That's The Last Dance.
Oh, yeah,
that
that's
is The
what I meant.
Last Dance. But he's talking about when...
Is it Isaiah Thomas?
Yeah. When they wouldn't shake their hands, they left the court early.
Oh. You know what? It was funny. I never even realized it, and I was a big fan of the Dream Team and everything. I never realized Isaiah Thomas wasn't on it until watching that and then going, wait a minute. He was a great player at the time. Why wasn't he on it? That's weird.
Do you
It's
remember?
Like, oh, yeah. They all hated him.
Do you remember writing the letter to Isaiah Thomas to get a?
Yeah, I got his card signed.
Yeah.
I thought you wrote it to Clyde Drexler.
No, we stood in line for Clyde Drexler's signature.
Oh.
Yep.
Clyde the Glide.
But man, talk about the dumbest card you could ever get signed, like something with no value. It was an Isaiah Thomas don't do drugs card, right? Who's ever going to want to buy? Like, hey, nope, he signed it though. No, nobody ever wants that card. That's a dumb card. And that's the card I sent to him, and that's the card he sent back signed.
Did you send him a card, or you just? I thought you.
No,
just
I mailed it to him.
Oh, you sent him a card?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you just sent him a letter asking for.
Oh, I sent him that card because I was
okay.
on the DARE. I was the DARE president or something for the school.
That was a successful campaign.
Okay, now onto the fun stuff. But so like in like summary of kind of what St. Helens was like, it was like Dangerous Minds, but for little kids. Like so, like the Rugrats version of Dangerous Minds, basically.
I never saw the movie.
No,
No, can you explain the reference?
it's a lot of gang-related violence, but for us, it wasn't gangs; it was just violence.
Was it really that bad?
Yeah, you
ever
kidding
think
me?
about that? Was it really that bad? I mean, I know it was definitely a rough town, but was it like this place should be condemned type of town?
I was in detention like almost every day
Yeah, so was I.
as a 9-year-old
Yeah, so was I.
for fighting.
Oh, well, I wasn't fighting. I was just
Well, I mean, don't get me
dinking
wrong.
off.
I know kids did bad things. So, like, there was one kid, and this was like just a funny thing that everybody laughed at, but he would heat up BBs on the radiator and then throw them at people, and it would like burn their necks, right? Like, we're talking like get them really hot, throw
Yeah.
them at people, burn their necks. And it was like, idiot, go to detention. Like, that was it. It wasn't like this kid is messed up. Somebody needs to evaluate him. He shouldn't be doing physical harm like that.
Did you go to Condon Elementary School?
I did. That's why I got expelled from that school.
Oh, that's right.
So I had to get transferred to a different school.
But you remember, so this school was like built in like the 40s or something.
Yeah.
Old. Had like the old style radiators everywhere, keeping it warm.
Yep.
You know, it didn't get that cold in Oregon, so it was fine. But the idiots put those radiators in the little boys' bathrooms.
Oh yeah. That's right.
So the halls
And?
always smelled like pee.
Oh.
People are
Because
peeing on the
little
radiators.
boys-
Wow.
So
Would always
that
pee.
whole town would smell like pee and poop because of the pulp mill.
Yeah.
Oh, I loved it.
But
When
I
new
mean-
kids would come to class.
So I remember
Can I
the
finish
worst.
here? Can I finish here?
Oh,
I
you
was-
had more?
Yeah. So you always knew when there was a new kid because you'd be sitting in the middle of class, it'd be perfectly quiet, and some kid would be like, "What is that smell? Oh man!" And it's like, this kid hasn't lived here very long. Because the pulp mill would make the whole town smell like crap.
Yeah. It was.
And they had no idea.
Just depending on which way the wind
It's like
blew.
they just realized it there in the middle of class. I'm like, oh boy, you're in for a treat because this happens every day, my friend.
Yeah, it is insane to think of. But the biggest actually there are two things. First thing was the all playground brawl that happened, which you had to have been out there for. Because we went to Condon at the same time. Because I remember there was a kid who was special needs that before like I even grasped like what that meant, my friends and I making fun of him and you telling us that he came from a home where he was beat with a bike chain. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No.
But
I was a mentor or whatever that program was,
okay.
where I would go out to your recesses, and this is actually pretty funny, and it kind of goes along with this. There were so many fights that we had an in-school program, where if you were in 5th and 6th grade, you would go out to recess at other people's recess to stop fights because there were so many fights that would happen. And I remember just every day.
See,
there'd
that
be a
didn't,
fight
that
that would
didn't
happen.
happen while I was there.
Oh, really?
I was there, that program didn't exist when I was.
Yeah, we were constantly fighting.
So in 2 years between the time I was 5th and 6th grade to when Scott was in 5th and 6th grade, your generation was coming through.
But it'd be like there was
fucking
so
nuts.
many fist fights that there was like I don't know how many recess ladies, 2 maybe.
Yeah. And they were
But
like
they probably just couldn't even
60-year-old
handle
ladies.
it. They're so like, all right, you got to bring a couple of 6th graders and 5th graders in here to try to stop some of this stuff. I was that man.
Yeah. So that's like the first thing that I remember, like when I think back on that school, is because all of the kids had to line up in their grade, and then you would go in based on that. And one day while everybody was lined up, some commotion happened, and then all of the lines just got blurred, and the whole fucking playground was just fighting.
Now the biggest chaos I remember was the bomb threat day. We got a day off of school. So
Yep.
that was pretty cool.
You probably weren't in elementary because this is when I was at John Gum. When I get expelled, transferred to another school, and I remember on the bus on the way to school, the bus just pulled over, and we had to just wait there, and it was because there was a shootout going on not far away from where John Gum was. And so we had to just wait on the bus until the heat had died down. But yeah, just fighting all the time. felt like it just never ended. And then we moved to Columbia City.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the first memory I have of like substance being introduced like at a young age. And I don't know what your guys' experience was like. Were people smoking cigarettes or like what was...
People were, when I was going to Condon in 3rd grade, people were smoking cigarettes. I knew kids at 3rd grade that were smoking.
We would go over to, and I know this is just kind of a precursor, but this just shows how like above people's grade they were, or trying to act at least. These kids were going over to Red Apple in 2nd grade to get coffee. 2nd grade. They were going, I remember going over to Red Apple with people before school, and they were getting coffee.
I remember people going to, remember the little Dairy Delish ice cream place?
Yeah.
They had coffee there too. And I remember going there and friends getting coffee at like you say, 8 years old.
Right. So that just shows you like how above, like they were, even at that young of age, they were just doing whatever the thing was that they weren't supposed to be doing.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, that encapsulates that that elementary experience. Like for me too, is just constantly like we would look for, we would get used cigarettes out of, you know,
The receptacles.
yeah. Well, I don't want to say trash cans, but like ashtrays. Those public ones, we'd go, and it's funny you say Red Apple because that's where we would find them a lot of the time. But Columbia City though, it was like there was a different, like that stuff was really out in the open. Like it seemed like all of the kids were just out of their minds and doing shit like that. But in Columbia City, it was more like, yeah, we drink. We like drink our parents' wine. We drink. I remember John Eckhart getting drunk off of his dad's liquor when, 4th grade, whatever that is, not 10, like 10 years old. And they just, from then on, the rest of my little troop of friends would do that. I took a sip of beer one time from, do you remember Todd Julian?
Just down the street?
Yeah.
No, they were up the road by the club.
They were up the road.
They were down. They were.
Oh, the Julians.
Yeah. He was drinking beer, and I have no idea how old he was, but, and yeah, that was the first time that I had tried it. But like for you guys, like when did people start trying to get you to do that stuff?
That wasn't until high school. I mean, cigarettes was always around. It was more chew.
Oh,
So anything before that was chew. And then in high school, I mean, even like, I don't even remember it being that prominent like freshman year. And it's probably just because me, who I was hanging out with, I mean, I'm sure it was happening, but it wasn't until like late freshman, early sophomore year that alcohol really started to be introduced where, I mean, it was pretty common that people were doing it. But yeah, chew. And it was exciting if somebody got it.
yeah.
But that was, I mean, yeah, cigarettes, not really. I remember at the Woods house, we rolled up some of his mom's mint and tried smoking it just because we were like, we couldn't get cigarettes. So we were like, oh, let's try this and let's see if it does anything.
She had a mint garden. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it was like notebook paper and mint.
Yeah. I did that too. I did it with Safeway grocery bags.
Oh, plastic. That's
I think
good.
I watched
paper
Predator and I think Arnold Schwarzenegger has a cigar in that, and I was like, fuck yeah.
That guy rules.
Yeah. But I mean, for you, how old were you when you first tried drinking or anything like that?
Probably wasn't until 16, 17.
Okay.
Why are you looking at me? I don't know.
I'm just thinking.
Does my face make you remember it?
Were you there now? I'm
just curious because I wonder, was it more like just this is what kids do, or was there, I feel awkward around people, therefore I'm going to try doing this thing to feel less awkward? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, for me it wasn't. Like I said, growing up, having moved a lot and being around a lot of new people, I was forced to be adaptable.
Okay.
I mean, it was just how it had to be to go from one school to the next, mid-school year oftentimes. So drinking to me just was like, well, everyone says it's fun, so must be fun.
Okay. And do you guys remember anything about mom and dad talking about our uncles having been alcoholics or anything like that?
Not until later, like when I'd moved out, then the talks came of your uncles were alcoholics and it's in your blood, and it wasn't until even she held on to the fact that our granddad was an alcoholic. She didn't let that one out until that was like her ace up her sleeve. Like, okay, well, if you're not going to listen about your uncles, your granddad was too. Thinking that would somehow up the ante and change my mind.
See, I remember the first time, like ever, like it was just like radio, listening to the radio, and they said like the word alcohol, and I remember mom like stopping and going, this is a very serious thing. You know that your uncles are all alcoholics, right? And I don't even think I was at that age. I was like, okay, yeah, mom, I get it. It's like, that's weird. But it was just like, it didn't take like she noticed that I was staying out late or anything else like that. It was just all of a sudden she was like it was just on the radio. And it was all of a sudden the most serious conversation I'd had with mom out of nowhere. I'm like, okay, you got it.
And I think the conversation I had from dad was never drink and drive, ever.
Okay.
I remember him telling you that.
See, and I guess I remember, I think it was before I went to New York for the first time when I was 14, was when I had been told that. And then I don't know if I had asked or how it came up, but then Wally telling me about his escapades and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And, but I still, like, I don't remember anyone making that connection to say that it is within you to become an addict.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Right.
It was more
just
like
just a statement of that wasn't enough to explain that there's a real hazard to you to follow that same path if you
Specifically to you.
Right, not to not to the rest of us.
No, like specifically to you, like if you're sitting there with your friends, right? Your best bud could have nothing to do with alcoholism, right? He could drink like a fish for a year and then just be like, all right, I'm done with that. I don't even want to do it anymore.
You're saying specific to you in like the royal sense.
Yeah, sure.
Royal sense just means like we, meaning all, like applicable to anybody. So you still being applicable to anybody is just like in the but anyways, yeah, none of that stuff connected. But like going back into history, like, and I don't know if it was as feverish for you guys, but I do remember, like, to circle back a little bit, like porn was very, I feel like we clearly were extremely drawn to that.
Yeah, that became way too accessible when the kids would go to the recycling bin, dumpster diving, and create a stockpile in that woods between school and home. And yeah, well, and on top of that, like after having to go talk to the bishop and tell him what we had done, where I was 6, so I didn't even know what any of that shit meant. But I remember from that point, like mentally going, nothing actually hurt anyone. And it made me feel different. I don't get the problem with viewing this thing and feeling different if it's not actually hurting anybody. But knowing that then we had to hide it for forever after that. And all of us having our own views on it, whatever way they manifested. I'm not trying to say you guys are gay, but I mean, so that's like the first inclination of addiction that I can recall is like, because that's what addicts do, is the getting away with the thing is just as thrilling as finding the thing. So like that cycle gets started early enough. It gets worse as you get older when you're constantly having fun and getting away with it. It just
like kind of spirals after that. But I don't know. I think you were the first like people like mom and dad thinking that you had a problem. And even then, still me.
Are we still talking porn or are we talking
Yeah, what are we talking about?
No, now we're just talking about addictions in general. So like mom and dad thought that you had a problem because you were just drinking in college. And in my brain, I was like, no, that's just what college people do. You end up in shenanigans. That shit just happens. And so I kept rationalizing all of the things so that I would not feel bad about doing it and would just figure out a way for me to be able to have. So it went from like what could have been normal things to like every single time I found out about something that could alter my state of mind, then I would like hunt after that thing. And it's also like a part of the hype. So, okay, I'm kind of all over the place here. We move to Minnesota. And that seemed like the first time that any of us kind of like we like genuinely took a hit. Because all of the other moves didn't seem to have negative aspects to it. Whereas Minnesota, there was a clear like depression that kind of washed over the family.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was a tough time. I was a senior in high school. It was midway through my senior year. Scott was a sophomore, midway through his sophomore year, stud football player.
But that didn't matter because football season wasn't for another little while, so I couldn't show off my goods. But it was awkward. This was probably the biggest change as far as scenery. They're different people.
Yeah.
That's a completely different culture.
It was a culture shock.
Yeah.
Whereas before we were in these communities, basically, right? You're in a college community, then you're in an army community. There's a bunch of people that are all in your same boat, and then all of a sudden we come here and it's like, well, hold on a second. I've been going to school with the exact same people since I was in kindergarten. Who are these guys?
Even
why are they wearing checkered jackets and bright pink and bright green?
Yeah. It was just a weird. It was a culture shock.
It was.
And I mean, I think maybe because you were into sports, you adapted a little better than us. But I am curious as to the dynamic change because you left, and then you were now the oldest. Was more responsibility pushed onto you? Did you feel?
No, not at all.
No?
I don't feel like it. No, but that's I think part of the problem is I felt like I had no responsibility to anybody at that point. Like I almost feel like everybody just, well,
was every boy for themselves?
Yeah, it was like every boy for themselves, and I was like, I was just keeping myself busy. I had sports, I had all that stuff, so I was just left alone. It's like, here's the green car, come back by 10. So I didn't have to worry about you guys very much at all, mentally, personally.
And that's interesting because where for you, like most of your childhood was, where are your brothers? What are they doing?
Babysitting, yeah.
Doing stuff
but
like...
that kind of went away as everybody got to the past that 11, 12 stage of, okay, you're old enough to take care of yourself.
But when it came, you still had, I would say, like a sense of responsibility when it came to teaching us about certain things, like snowboard culture, skate culture. Yeah. Like, I feel like you didn't relinquish any of that stuff until you moved.
Right.
And so I'm curious.
Keeping in contact wasn't what it is now. There wasn't Facebook. I didn't own a cell phone when I moved out of the house. So it couldn't just get a hold of each other and FaceTime. Those things didn't exist. It was a once in a while phone call to home, let mom and dad know I was alive. If I was going to go up to Canada, I'd call them, let them know I was going to leave the country. But
when you would go spans of time without seeing us and then come home, did you start to see like a change? What did it look like? What did we look like to you when you would come back? Did it seem like you were picking up where you left off, or did it seem like there were seemed to be more extreme changes?
It's hard to say. I was pretty into myself during that time. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't as observant as I should have been of others in general, like humans as a whole. I was so self-focused during that time period of my life that I missed a lot.
That's interesting to think of. When you were in high school, you were smaller than most people.
Yeah.
I mean, as were the rest of us, but you were like, because you were like 90 pounds for
Freshman year. Yeah, I was like maybe 5'2", maybe a little somewhere around there. And yeah, I think I wrestled, the lowest weight class was 100 pounds, and they didn't have a 100-pounder, so they wanted me on the team, so they didn't have an empty slot on their bench. But I was 82 pounds. So I was giving up 18 pounds and wrestling against kids that were cutting weight to get to 100 pounds, and they tossed me around like a rag doll. So after a couple matches of that, I said, no thanks. I'm done. I'm out.
Yeah, well, and so that's where I've wanted to ask these types of questions for a while, and I've struggled to find the framework on how to ask them. But it seemed like because of that, you knew how to survive in your own way, and you wanted the freedom to be able to do it that way. Mm-hmm. So you would have the things that you enjoyed, and you knew how to be, successful to whatever degree that means. And you just wanted to the license to be able to do that. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So when you started to but you did get like a really big push by moving back out to Oregon, and kind of being forced into adulthood pretty fast that way too. Mm-hmm. At what point did you change your mind and thought, I don't want it to just be about me, mm-hmm. or some hot chick. Mm-hmm. Like does that make sense what I'm trying to say?
Yeah. When did I start to want to become a better person and not just live in the moment?
Well, not even that it equates to being a better person, but just that something was missing, mm-hmm. and a way to feel whole was to have to let people in and have it not just be about you.
Man, it's gonna take a lot longer than I think. Aren't we, Pat? Did we hit our time limit?
So 30 to 45.
I think we're pretty close to our time. No, but I had a couple things leading up to seeing that I wasn't happy with where I was at in life. Living in an apartment in Portland that I could barely afford to heat, no food in the fridge, driving a car that was in the shop more than I was using it. So all my paychecks were going to fixing my broken down car and paying my portion of the rent. Working at a smoothie shop, and I knew I was capable of doing so much more than just surviving like that. And that's all I was doing, was just surviving to the weekend to, have my next bit of fun. And it wasn't real happiness. You know what I mean? It was the freedom that I'd always wanted and was pursuing, but it wasn't bringing me to a place where I was happy with myself or felt good about anything that I had accomplished, because I hadn't accomplished anything,
And I think that when you decided to go on your mission, there was a clear change in your moral compass, mm-hmm. that I was so unused to that it made me pull back. Mm-hmm. And I was more used to like the abrasive version of you.
Right.
And I think I didn't really like where I was at, even though I was still in high school. Like I didn't really like where I was at, smoking weed all the time, and for you to seem to have figured out how to have purpose, mm-hmm. plus you got to do all of the other things that I hadn't done yet, was like I feel like I resented that aspect. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, like I said, for me, so I got to a pretty dark place where, like I said, living in a cold, I mean, we didn't heat the apartment more than 60 degrees, so I slept under a blanket with a coat on, and it didn't get, colder than probably 35 degrees in Portland. It's not like Minnesota where it's 30 below, but
yeah,
barely keeping the house warm, surviving on next to nothing, ramen noodles and a smoothie because I worked at the smoothie shop. That's the only way I got any nutrients. I got to a point where I was questioning the existence of God. And that's where I guess it comes back to Michael again of I couldn't fathom that I would never see him again like that. I couldn't accept that. And so starting with that, I couldn't let go of the belief that there was a greater purpose.
Okay.
And kind of had to build back from ground zero from there of if there's a greater purpose, what is it and what should I be doing about it? But, that didn't happen overnight. I just kind of geared my mind to be ready for a change. It didn't instill the need to change. Obviously when Amanda came into my life and I felt what it was to be happier about trying to be a better person around her, that helped me have the desire to pursue that change.
What was that call with mom and dad like when you told them you were coming back?
Back to Minnesota?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. They probably have a good recollection of it. So kind of the real, what was weird about that was the reason I decided to come back. So I was trying to go to college on my own. I was paying for it by myself. Nobody coached me or guided me towards like student loans or how to finance it. So I was trying to do it with the money I'd earned over the summer. Well, that ran out after one semester. And I was, like I said, working full time at the smoothie shop, not making more than minimum wage hardly.
Yeah.
So I started that second semester at college and I couldn't afford to buy my textbooks. So instantly I started falling behind in my classes. And so before the timeline was up, I dropped out that second semester of Portland Community College. And then about that time, I got a letter in the mail saying I was being sued for an accident I'd had a year or two ago. Rear-ended a lady, and she was claiming damages for neck injury or something. And I was like, man, I got no money. I'm getting sued. I can't afford to go to college. Got to give up on this, trying to do it on my own. I got to go back home. I got to, come back to mom and dad and try and figure things out.
Raise your hand if you've never been sued before.
So what I didn't realize at the time, because as a 19-year-old kid, don't really understand when you get a letter saying you're being sued. What it was the insurance company was failing to pay out what they were, it's obviously the insurance company was liable to pay her for her
Yeah, but you don't know
expenses.
that at that age.
No, I didn't know that. And so because the insurance company hadn't paid her out, they sent out a letter to me directly about that. So I never had to actually deal with anything.
That's like when you get a bill from the hospital and you see that big dollar amount.
Right.
And you're like, holy shit, I can't pay that.
Right. But as a, like I said, a 19-year-old kid with limited understanding of the legalities of it, I'm reading this letter going, I'm being sued and I don't have a credit card. I don't have any way of paying this. I had nothing to my name,
Yeah.
Felt pretty hopeless.
Oh, and I mean, obviously from there, you've always had a really good, and I think you're the most like Dad in this sense that adapting and being able to push through shit jobs. You know what I mean? Like you guys seem to have a really high tolerance when it comes to seeing your goals and knowing that these are just footnotes.
Mm-hmm.
I am so in the moment and I hate every single job I've ever had.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been apparent because New York, by the time I was 18, I was like, this fucking blows. But you just kept plowing through and knocking it out. How long did you go to New York for?
A long time, many years. Like I don't even know. Like I've been there since basically every summer from when I was 15.
No, you skipped the next summer because you just wanted to be a kid.
1 year summer work will do that to you. It's like, ooh, this is rough.
Yeah, you were.
I got to be a kid again.
Well, no, yeah, when did you? No, because
Did I really?
You were 14 the first year you went out.
Whoa, mama.
Yeah, that's pretty young. So, you're like, I'm just a kid. I gotta be a kid. So
But
I think
then
you took your 15th year off, and then you came back. I think.
Yeah,
after that.
Then I was out there for a long, long time, many years.
Yeah. Did we all go when we were 14?
No, I was 16. That was the
You were
first. That was the
16?
first
Okay.
time it happened. I was 16. Scott was 14. It was just for a month, and then the next year I went back alone for the entire summer, like the day after school got out till like a week before school started.
I wonder if that's why I didn't want to go, because I think you were very money driven at that point.
Yeah, I remember I was raised with broke parents.
Yeah.
So if I wanted things, I had to figure out how to get them.
Unlike Josh, I'm looking at you, Josh. I know you're watching.
Raise your hand if you don't have one of mom and dad's credit cards in your wallet. So, I mean, for you, you've kind of had like a more free spirit approach to things, and the notion that education will that's what's going to take care of you in the long run.
Well,
So
that's what we were told. I mean, we watched Dad go through school. We were kids at school while Dad was going to school, and we were brought up that you finish high school and you go to college.
Mhm.
There wasn't an option. It was just, this is what life is.
See, when I was going through it too, it wasn't just about the education. It was like college is where things had happened, right? So like in high school as like a junior, it's like, all right, well, you go to college. That's where you meet your wife. You get married a couple of years after college, and then you start having kids. So it was like, it wasn't even just about education. It was like everything happens at college. So that's why everybody
just the
goes to
path of
college,
life.
because that's where you go. That's where things start to happen. And that's just, it's so funny to think about, because I bet I had that exact conversation in like as a junior in high school, being like, oh yeah, so I'll go to college. I'll meet my wife at college. We'll start having kids at like, I don't know, 25, 26, something like that. And almost all those things came true, like to the T.
That's funny.
that's really interesting. Yeah, I would not have thought about it that way. Do you have a job in what you went to school for?
Yeah.
What about you?
My second degree, yes. But no.
Second
yeah,
degree.
yeah.
But my first degree, no. I mean, I was, my first degree in biomedical science, and I was working as a buyer at a paper mill and had a house and 2 kids and one on the way. And I was like, well,
One's
guess
on the way. Tammy Wynette, I think.
it's like, I guess I'm doing this.
Is that
One's
Mandarin?
in the kitchen, the other's in the sleeping. When one's on the way. You heard it? We're cutting this out, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Awful. Now, man, that's interesting you say that though, because I hadn't thought about that. So things did kind of go the way that it seemed like they were supposed to go, in that formula, right? Of you do well enough in high school to get to college, you do well enough in college to graduate, and then once you have your degree, you'll have your wife by then, and da 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 da. At what point did anxiety? Because I mean, I think like we all have some form of anxiety in our family, and no one started to learn that shit until mom finally they tried to put her on a medication, and it went the way that it did, and but that was like the first kind of thing that I had heard. But beyond that, it was just, no, everybody's fine.
Right.
And then you learn just on both sides of the family the amount of social anxiety, PTSD, probably bipolar like myself. Well, I mean, I know for sure a couple of cousins who have been diagnosed with that as well. So like just this litany of mental health stuff that we were just kind of like, you just keep doing, just keep going until you just forget that you have the thing. But I mean, you and I spoke, kind of when I had been put in the hospital the first time, and you realizing that you had like anxiety issues, and and that there wasn't like any one activity that could just make you forget about the anxiety that you were feeling. Do you remember, like, did that happen with that job that you had, or was there something that had kind of started a little further back?
No, well, it's all about when you realize it. So I didn't even realize it until recently. And we're talking recently, like 10 years ago, right? But it's almost like equated to when I went to go get my, Sam, when I first knew her, she went go get her eyes checked, right? They're like, oh, you need glasses. It's a very, very small prescription. It's like the smallest prescription you can get, right? Your eyes are almost perfect, but you could wear these and they could be better. And she wore those, and she's like, here, try these on. And all of a sudden I tried them on, and it was like, holy crap, everything is in, at the time, 1080, right?
Sure.
It's like, I did not realize that this is the way that you're supposed to see, right? And it's the same thing with, like, I just thought this was stress all the time. It's like, okay, this is typical stress. This is what everybody's going through. Until at one point you're like, well, maybe it's not. And then it's like, finally you talk to a doctor, you get things figured out, and you take, like, for me, it was one pill. And then as soon as I took that one pill, then I was like, whoa, this is how you're supposed to be able to live your life without having to worry about that all the time. So it's just, yeah. So it wasn't like 10, I would probably say it was 10, 11 years ago that it was just the realization that there's a difference between typical stress and having terrible anxiety.
Where you just want to lay in bed and cover yourself up and not get out of bed all day.
Yeah.
Right.
Which we would do that all the time, which is another like thing that for like some kids it was like, yeah, he's lazy, he's in bed still, but for us it was a little different. Like, because it was always randomly. We all did that to some extent. And with Matt, like his there were just things that he didn't want to do, and he wasn't able to explain why he didn't want to do that thing well enough, and he just wanted you to leave it alone, and so that's why he would have those big outbursts. But it's all anxiety. Like, we all just had to deal with that, and it sucks that it took so long to like even realize what any of that shit was. Because I mean, I was diagnosed with depression when I was 18, but it still just stated that. Like and I mean, obviously with the times, like we now know more about, like, it's never, well, I shouldn't say never. A lot of the times it's not just depression. There's something else going on. And you have to dive in and kind of deconstruct all that shit. And so it's crazy that within the last like 6 months is only when I finally figured out like all of the things. And it just, I wonder what life would have looked like if, like you were saying, somebody would have just put a pair of glasses on, and then we all would have been like, oh yeah, I don't feel like hiding from my friends right now, or I don't feel like avoiding XYZ. Like, I don't know. It's really weird. And when my addiction stuff started, did it cause you guys like any reflection on either past use, current use? Like, did you start to evaluate the way that you used? Does that make sense?
I don't think so. Like I said, for me, it was just felt like there was a wall between us. It created a division of, you're doing this thing and you don't want me to be, I'm not a part of that thing. So you're pursuing, avenues that bring that to you. And so just coming over to hang out and do whatever that's not that, just watching movies or playing board games or something stupid, that wasn't on the table because it wasn't bringing you what you needed at that time. So to me, it just created that separation between us for a period of time.
I think for me, instantly, it wasn't the fact of me reflecting on myself. It was like almost instantly, it was like a few people looking at me like, is this making you think about it? And then as soon as that happens, it's like, you kind of get defensive. It's like, leave me alone. I'm not like that. I'm not Chris, you know?
Yeah.
Why aren't you looking at him? Why are you looking at me? So I guess I haven't, even to this day, I probably haven't really reflected on it a ton because I've just tried to deflect it to be like, it's not my problem.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, obviously, like a big thing is it's when your life becomes unmanageable is like is really the only time that people try to label it for sure. But yeah, I guess I was just curious to because I don't know, like for a lot of people, like I was their first addict. Like I was the first person who had to go to treatment and all that shit. So it was, there's a lot of questions like on my end to see like what does what we call normies, what does a normie think of someone like me, or like does it make them look at anything else? Do they, or does that even, it's so far from even the realm of understanding because never felt like I have to have this thing or I'm going to die. So I can't even relate to it or like any of that stuff. So I don't get to ask that very often.
But think about it. I mean, even in our situation, we've got this whole side of the family that's been addicts, right? But where are they at now? You know, they're all fairly normal people. And so even what we see as people who are addicts, it's like, oh, they're fine. They go to treatment and then they're fine.
Didn't it also seem kind of like a joke too, though?
Yeah.
Like when they would talk about them being alcoholics, like Wally never shied away from talking about it. Joe never shied away from talking about it. And like they would do it in a way that like it almost seemed like, but we were also younger. So that shit just happens when you're younger. Not addressing the actual addiction itself. And it was more of like, oh yeah, if I can survive it in my younger years, then I'll be fine when I'm older. You know what I mean?
Yeah, obviously that was a different era, you know, even less educated about addiction issues and mental health issues than where we're at today. So I get what you're saying. They, you know, they try not to dwell on the negative side of it, and but they, you know, they each have recognized the harm that it caused in their life and moved on from that. And you know, I always saw it as a great victory for each of them. That how amazing that they were able to give it up at that age. You know, all pretty young. You know, they were all pretty young when they gave it up, and
that's interesting.
Just held to it. Like, nope, it put me in a path that didn't work, and I gave it up, and now I'm a different person.
We're talking about almost being able to go buy alcohol. Like they were basically minors at some point.
Yeah.
It was like they were young people. They were already basically in and out of rehab before people of their age had taken their first sip of alcohol.
Right. Yeah, Wally was 21. Joe was, I think, under 21.
I'm not. Yeah, I'm pretty young when they
But
stopped.
yeah, that's interesting though, that concept of like, because yeah, as at that age, I definitely could not imagine not drinking or anything like that. It's a weird thought. When I ended up going through the stuff that I went through, what were things that helped you guys either better understand or get through? Because I still don't really know what the family was doing, like while I was in the hospital or while I was in treatment. I have no idea what your guys' communication with each other was, even if you were talking with each other about any of this stuff.
Yeah, we were, you know, talking to each other about it, and it was all centered around what can we do to help? How can we help Chris, you know, once he's out of the hospital? What can we do to help him feel supported in his recovery and, you know, be more involved? That was my goal. Is I wanted to make sure I stayed more involved and knew what was going on with you and not lose sight of that.
And I think Sean did a good job of corralling us in that, but that's the conversations that we were having as a whole. Like the conversation that I was having personally, in my family was more like, this kid is super selfish. And this really makes me mad that he's doing this, right? Like it was a very selfish thing that what he was trying to do. So even, I guess I still don't even understand.
You talking about my suicide attempts?
Yes. And not just that, but just in alcoholism or any kind of addiction is a very selfish thing. You're really only thinking about yourself, you know? You're not doing it for other people. So that was my internal thoughts. So it was, I mean, we were all there. We want you to be better, right? And so I would have done anything to help make sure that we were there for you. But still, my own personal thoughts was that of you being selfish.
And that's insanely common because we are the vehicle with which you see addiction. So addiction is not able to exist without a host, right? So people see, we're all that you see of it. So like addiction doesn't really look like addiction. It looks like me putting something over my family's well-being, over my own well-being and things like that. Have I told you about that whole midbrain process and all of that?
No, Dr. Chris.
So on a primal level, in order to survive, we evolved to have a midbrain, which needed to introduce a reward system for simply surviving. So you need food, water, you need to breathe. And so our brains figured out a way to introduce, that's where dopamine comes in. So figured out a way to, when we do what we need to survive, we need to introduce dopamine in some way. And when you do that, your brain then remembers that. And so your brain starts to, so it turns into this 3-step process. So the midbrain says, hey, we need this. And then the second part, which is your limbic system, is like the contemplation. All right, how do we get the thing? And then the prefrontal cortex is the third thing that puts it into action. So because these were really basic things and it would happen really quickly, it was very, I don't know, instinctual, primal, all that stuff. When substance got introduced, it doubles the amount of dopamine that your body is used to having. So in some people, the addict especially, our brain says, oh man, we now need this to survive because we know that dopamine is associated with survival. So it does this now. So the midbrain says, okay, we need the dopamine because that equals survival. So how do we get the dopamine? We skip the thought process and go straight to action. So when you hear people say like, before I even realized that I was reaching for the bottle, or before I even realized that I was shooting up heroin, like it's because you're literally changing your anatomy. And now your brain is like, this is just how we survive. And when you remove that thing, your whole wiring system just starts to freak the fuck out. Like I was an insomniac for a week straight, like couldn't sleep, heart constantly racing. And it's because your body kind of goes into like fight or flight. It's like, dude, why aren't you introducing the thing that we know we need to survive? So it's called the disease of choice because initially we choose to use the substance. We don't choose how our body chooses to process that. And I didn't learn that until I think I was 2.5 weeks into treatment. And when I heard that, I was like, oh, okay. So when my brain says you need that thing, I need to make sure that I'm introducing the why, the questions. Why do we need this thing? How are we going to get that thing? Is getting that thing, is the process to get that thing negatively affecting other people? So like I had to start to rewire and reframe like normal thought processes. But that's what's helped me the most in like understanding addiction, like on a very like primal level. But it's going to look selfish because yeah, we're the ones doing it. And it's not like it's some thing that outwardly makes you look ill, because you have to introduce the thing first. Right? Like an addict has to drink the booze, we have to snort a line or whatever to keep the disease going. So it all just looks like I'm making choices to be shitty over and over and over again. Does that make more sense?
A little bit. I'm still trying to figure out, and I'm sure everybody is, just the tie between addiction and mental illness, right? Like, is there one that's more important? Like, what do you need to be looking for? Do you need to be focusing on your addiction, or do you need to be focusing on your mental illness? Being better at both of those. Like,
Sure.
which one's the one that, or how do you do it intertwined? Like, how do you do them both at the same time?
So the majority of addicts have some type of mental health issue. And I only say issue because people don't recognize PTSD a lot of times for even being PTSD. Like, you probably wouldn't even realize that you being the one that found Michael to be something traumatic and something that's logged in your brain that way. And that type of thing is something that can drive someone to drink, and they have no idea that that is the driving force that's making them drink. So underlying mental health issues can play a really big part in, on a subconscious level, like you're not even realizing that this is the thing that kind of is pushing you towards that thing as well. And for me, not addressing my mental health stuff, like I would try to own like depression, but I didn't want to address all of the other mental health issues that I clearly had. Like a lot of like the self-righteous shit that I would do. That's a really common thing when it comes to like bipolar stuff. So like, because I feel so strongly about this thing, it means I'm right. And now we're going to fucking argue about it. That creates a dynamic of people don't understand me, and fuck it. If nobody understands me, then I might as well get fucked up. So there's little things like that. For some people, it's like microaggressions that happen throughout their life and kind of puts them on that path. But yeah, I mean, to some degree, there was one person that I was in treatment with that didn't have some underlying mental health issue. And these were ranging from an 18-year-old to a 65-year-old. And every single one of them had something that they didn't even realize was traumatic or anything like that. Like there was 2 grown men who thought that other grown men woke up screaming all the time. And like that they had to have white noise machines, otherwise they were going to wake up screaming. They thought that was just a normal thing. So mental health is huge in addiction. And if you don't address it, it can be a big reason for relapse. So I would say they're very, very, very much intertwined.
Well, what are you focused on right now?
So that was my big focus when I got, like right before I got out, was I need to understand my mental health stuff more, because I would use it as an excuse to use. I feel shitty, or I would get the fuckets and then that would be an excuse to drink rather than realizing that I had an addiction. So I chose to, rather than going to AA meetings, just doing more research into how the brain works and how your anatomy works, and why we feel like we have to hunt for that thing. Because that's another big thing, is like the hunt, as they say. Because there's people that get addicted to dealing. And part of that is this very primal, if you don't have to activate fight or flight, like there's no reason most people on a daily basis to have to activate their fight or flight. So getting away with crimes, it's activating that fight or flight. That's why like some people are really into horror movies, is because it's activating that fight or flight.
That's why some people really like to Facebook fight.
Yeah, for sure.
Why did you look at me? I don't like the Facebook fight.
I don't think you like the Facebook fight either. I think you like the real fight.
Do you still Facebook?
I have the Facebook.
I have the Facebook, but do you?
I Facebook. I like to get on late at night and make one or two sarcastic comments, and then look at it again in about a couple weeks.
Nice. It was sucking my life away. I was giving it like 2 hours a night of just mindless scrolling, so I had to give it up.
Yikes.
Yeah. But anyways, mental health stuff is incredibly important in my personal recovery. The more that I understand about how the brain works, the more I'm able to look at my addiction as like an outward thing. Like it feels like you're in remission, and so the cancer's out of me, and so now I'm looking at it like it's over there now. So we're just going to keep doing things that keep it from coming back in, is what it feels like. And I think that's super. I mean, mental health is obviously insanely important in any regard, or irregardless, as some people might say.
Thank you.
So, I mean, whether you're in addiction or not, I think if any of that resonates with you, and I mean like the royal you again, then just I mean, if there's somebody close to you, ask them, hey, have you ever dealt with something like this? If they say no, get a second opinion. Maybe now you ask somebody professionally, hey, is this common? And go from there. I hate for this to be a plug, but you can go to betterhelp.com/DDGD. Thousands of counselors. Like I know it's a plug, but like it's an insane resource that like
it's called free advertising.
Yeah, it's really fucking hard to find.
Is this a leaky dam? Because you just plugged it.
It is. But yeah, it's a lot harder than people think to just Google this stuff. Like I remember trying to Google counselors before I left treatment, and it was actually really hard. And when you do find someone who specializes in your niche thing, they're booked out forever. So you only get to see them like once a month. It's insane. So this resource allows you to be in constant communication with your counselor. So
nice.
BetterHelp.com/DDGD. I feel
click the link at the bottom of your screen.
YUCKY saying it, but it is fucking insane. Well, I love you both very much.
We love you. I love you.
I
And
mean, I love you. I love you too.
I didn't say I love you.
I know I've pulled back, but. And I make a lot of excuses as to why I've pulled back on certain things. Obviously, podcasting like crazy is taking up a lot of my time, but
it helps you, and so that's why you like you said, you didn't go to the AA, you don't have your weekly meetings, but this is your outlet. This is your way to make sure that you're focused on improvement, and it's your medium for continuing that growth and that. Leaving that old life behind. And
yeah,
but is it true what they say though, where it's like basically if you're an addict, you're going to be addicted to something? I mean, this is why people go and they like all of a sudden they just become Jesus freaks, right? They'll go from recovery to this. Is that good? Is that okay to be like addicted? Like, let's say you get addicted to podcasting, right?
Yeah.
Which I don't even know if you could do. But,
for sure.
I mean, is this a good thing? Like, should you be striving towards something like this, or is that part of the helping process?
Yeah, for me, I'm lucky in the sense that it's not like some self-fulfilling thing. Like almost every single episode of this, especially, I learned something. So it's but it is insanely common, and I think the danger in becoming addicted to another thing is not is lacking the capacity to realize that you're addicted to that thing. People think, like addicts think that because we're not doing substance, therefore we're not addicts anymore. And that's, I mean, the success rate of addicts is 5%. 5% of us make it out without relapse, which is, it still freaks me out because like I know that like I don't even on my really, really bad days, I don't quite remember how to get myself ramped up to want to drink again. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like I get angry now and when I think about that stuff, I'm like, it would make things so much worse.
Mm-hmm.
So but I don't know. It's something that you have to constantly work at. So, I mean, it's just that thought that I'm not using, therefore I'm not an addict anymore. I think as long as you can continue to say, I'm going to be in recovery for the rest of my life, and I have to frame it that way to make sure that it doesn't come back, then you'll be okay. It's when people say that I'm not an addict anymore, that they kind of, it can, you're tricking yourself, really. So I'm not naive. Like I'm lucky. I say that constantly. I'm lucky that I have the family that I have. I'm lucky that I have you guys. Like the support system that I have is not a luxury, or it's not a luxury that other people have. Mm-hmm. A lot of other people have really, really bad support systems, and nobody is understanding of addiction. They think it's a selfish thing. And so like there were people that were constantly leaving their spouses in treatment. And so, yeah, man, I'm just unbelievably lucky. And I have to keep thinking of this as something that I will always be in recovery. Can't ever think that I'm cured. So
boom, mic drop.
Yeah. That's my thought process. But yeah, I love you guys. Thank you so much for being willing to. I know I was kind of all over the place, but there's like I said, a lot that I don't remember of like our younger years and like kind of how that dynamic was and your guys' perception of it too. Because I think I assume a lot. Mm-hmm. Like I thought that I knew how you guys were going to answer the questions that I asked, and I was happily surprised that I was wrong. You guys answered them in completely different ways. So thank you very much for doing this.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Only for you.
All right. You can find us on all of the social medias at Duck Duck Grey Duke. If you or yourself, or I'm sorry, if you or a loved one have been affected by addiction, you can absolutely submit questions. Or if you'd like to be featured anonymously, you can absolutely call in anonymously and tell us your story. Or if you just need to vent about things, you can always email at DuckDuckGrayDuke, and we're there as well. All right. Thank you guys very much. And with that, we will pass.